talk about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love. Yes, I got fears. Fear of plane crash. Fear of car crash. Oh, fear of sex. Fear of alcohol.
So welcome to a new week of Unsolved No More. Today's Monday, so solved or unsolved, what new case are we getting today? Today we're getting the unsolved case of homicide in Bellingham, Massachusetts from December 4th, 1978. This is the case of Theresa Corley. Now, for those of you who have read my book, Unsolved No More, this case is highlighted in that. This is a very complex case, especially if you make it that way. I did an original assessment of this, which I provided to the family, and specifically Theresa's sister, Jerry, who I reached out to, as I always do in these cases, to make sure that it's okay that I do the case and talk about the case, because victims and victims' families are always foremost for me. And if she would have said no, we wouldn't have done it. I went on to another case. But we've had contact now for a number of years about the case, and there's been some new developments in the case since I did my assessment. Oh, how long ago was that? 2016. So we'll talk about that. We'll go over victimology, which is always very important. And in this specific case, I got a lot of victimology because I had the family fill out a victimology form, which I ask a bunch of questions and they answer, and it gives me, something to go on. Because when you know victimology, you'll know if the victim would fight or flight in any given circumstance. And that's going to be very important in this case. So, again, this case is from 1978. Forensics is going to play a key role because back then, obviously, we didn't have DNA, right? It was just the start of criminal profiling. So the case has developed through the years with the advances of all that, which in turn makes, for updates, in which we will have. So the synopsis of this case is that a 19-year-old Theresa Corley started her day on December 4th, 1978 by working. And she worked at a place called Penthouse Sales. Now, in my original assessment, and probably even after I get through reviewing this again this week, that place of employment played a key role in my assessment. She worked from around 3 to 7, and then she eventually goes out that night. She goes out that night and meets her boyfriend at a bar called the Train Stop. While there, she gets into an argument and a fight with the boyfriend, and she leaves. And she leaves on foot. Then she's intoxicated. And the next thing you know, she's picked up by a car full of young white males who may or may not had nefarious activities on their mind. Theresa knew at least one of the people for sure in the car, and they said they were going to a party she decided to go with. So she went to this party in a different part of town that was called the Presidential Arms apartment buildings. She is there for a number of hours. You know, what happens during those number of hours is a very conflicting report. There was at least 4, 5, maybe 6 individuals, all males, at this party. Theresa probably did not feel comfortable at that party. At some point in time, I know she didn't feel comfortable there. Depending on whose statement you believe from that party, Theresa either was sexually assaulted by one or more individuals, or it was a consensual activity between her and at least one or maybe several of the individuals, depending on who you believe. Now, victimology, again, will play a key role in this in order to determine who's telling the truth there. But yet, it gets more convoluted than that, because she ends up leaving that apartment and that party on foot by herself. And remember, weather always plays a key role. And we'll talk about the weather during that night. She is seen by I believe, a dairy truck driver early in the morning who is finishing up his milk routes. So we're talking about 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30. And we'll dive deeper into these timelines, and I'll know for sure and let you guys know what the times are. But again, this is just a synopsis. That truck driver gives her a ride to his employment. She's trying to get home. If you follow the apartment to where the dairy truck driver's employment is, and from there, she is picked up by another truck driver from that same company and is taken, I want to say, a half a mile, if that, from her home. And she's dropped off right in front of a police station. Yet, being a half a mile from her house, 5:30 in the morning, she never made it home. Her body is found 3 days later, December 8th, off of Interstate 495, which is a major highway, approximately a couple miles from where she was last seen in front of that police station. She is wearing 2 different types of shoes. One of hers, one a male shoe from that apartment. She is found naked. Some of her clothing found with her, next to her. Some of her clothing never found. Autopsy report shows she was strangled to death by a thin ligature. Remember that. Advances in DNA technology will play a role in this in the year 2020, maybe 2021. The body of Theresa Corley was exhumed last year, where advanced testing could be done. And this case is still unsolved. So a lot of moving parts in this case. You have a group of guys from that Presidential Arms apartment who may or may not have sexually assaulted this victim. But that same night, within a couple hours, she's murdered. Coincidence? It should also be noted that during this time frame, there was at least, I believe, 17 murders. Let me look here. No. 18 murders within 50 miles between New Bedford and Bellingham, Massachusetts during this time, ranging from the age of 14 to 30. All young females. A lot of them found dumped off a highway in Bedford, Massachusetts. So this case probably more than any other case that I've been consulted on, that wasn't really one of my own, but I was hired to consult on it, made me think more than any other case. Because you have so many different scenarios in this. You don't have a crime scene, but you do have a body dump location. That could be a crime scene too, but being off of a major highway early in the morning, probably between 5:30 and 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. maybe. People are going to work. It's a weekday. The many scenarios that could have taken place. Theresa got in a fight that night with her boyfriend. She was mad that he was talking to another female. You have that scenario. She leaves in an anger and a jealousy, goes to a party with a bunch of guys. There is no doubt some sexual activity took place. She leaves in such a huff that she has 2 different shoes on. Could have been because of intoxication, could have been because she was angry, could have been that she was scared and running. She makes her way from that apartment where she's picked up by 2 different truck drivers that drop her off right in front of a police station around 5 a.m. She's within a half a mile from making it home. But there's something else. There's something else that played into my assessment the first time around. There was a restaurant called Maria's, right where she was dropped off at. That restaurant opened up at 5 a.m. That's all I'm going to say about that until tomorrow. But she's half a mile. Maybe even not a half a mile. It might have been less than that. From home. She was sexually assaulted, dropped off. Police station's right there. What happened? That's what we got to figure out. There's been a lot of interviews. There has been a family that won't give up. And that's what I admire most about these victims' family members. The fact that they won't give up. Remember, that's the definition of a champion. A champion is somebody who just refuses to stay down. Theresa's family refuses to stay down. Very respectful, but will speak their mind to get justice. And that's what it counts. That's what's important. So, although I know this case very well, there's a lot more to go over. And I poured over it 5 years ago. But I have to pour over it again and again and again until you know it like the back of your hand. So, with the family's permission, I'm going to present the case to you once again. I'm going to give you my assessment from 5 years ago and see if I still maintain that, if I still believe that, because I'm very sure of that assessment in the past. But am I still? We'll get into that. We'll also get into if we can tell whether it's an organized or disorganized offender. Whether she knew this individual or whether not. And we're also going to get into the key clue tomorrow. Something that has to do with that restaurant. Possible. It's something that was found during an autopsy. However, we're going by the word of the victim's family. We don't have the actual autopsy report where it shows what I mean. And if that's the case, what do you believe? And we'll get into that key clue tomorrow, because trust me, it's the biggest key clue, I think, in this case. It changes everything. Possibly. So, that's it for Monday's Solved or Unsolved. The unsolved murder of Theresa Corley. We're going to get into it. Stay tuned all week, okay? So, tomorrow we're going to do my key clue. We're going to talk about that. And then Wednesday's the deep dive. We're going to get into the suspects. We're going to get into the criminal profile, if it's warranted, crime scene assessment, body dump locations, victimology, suspectology. We're going to have to deduce from possibilities of all these offenders to probabilities. And what do we believe? I can guarantee you it's going to be one of three things. Okay? Suspect-wise. You know? And that's what we're going to go off of. I'll present that. Then you guys can make up your decision, and you may agree with me, you may disagree with me. And as always, that's okay. I'm never going to proclaim to be 100% right unless I say it. If I say, hey, I'm 100% sure, but that's very rare. You can always be fallible. You know, we are human, and if different things come available, things change. Assessments could change. We don't know everything that the police know. Okay? Especially in this. There's contradicting testimony by the first officer on scene that discovered the body as to how she was found. And this is very important. You know, in one statement, he says she was displayed, spread-eagled. The next one, she was face down, had clothes on. What? That's a big change. Okay? Especially when trying to determine whether the offender's organized or disorganized and what you're looking for. That's huge. So, we've got to look into that as well. All these discrepancies. Again, the police know everything. Okay? It's my opinion, by following this case, it seems like most, if not all, of the police investigators involved in this truly do care, and they are doing a good job in progressing us. And of course, I think it helps that the family members are pressing them, but they're being respectful doing it. And as long as you are like that and you do that, I think it keeps the fire going and they keep working it. But as you know, if the investigators are doing a bad job, I will say such. I'm not timid in that area. But when they're doing a good job, I'll tell them. I've been in that situation, so I empathize with them. However, I empathize with the families even more. Always. So, we'll get into that this week. So, this is it for Solved or Unsolved. This week's case, Theresa Corley. Stay tuned the rest of the week until we figure out what we're going to do. Remember, Wednesday's the deep dive. Thursday, we're going to go live and we're going to talk about all of this. And then Friday is your Q&A session, and we'll get that out. So this week, stay tuned for Solved or Unsolved. Theresa Corley on Unsolved No More. Main's out.
Oh.